Let's take a look at putting a Kawasaki audio system in the Kawasaki Mule Pro FXR. We're going to do an AM/FM Bluetooth source unit that comes in a nice source unit panel. It's going to install right in the pocket, right in the center of your mule. Then we're also going to do a pair of visor overhead 6.5-inch waterproof coax speakers that are going to go right up here into the rocks. Super easy to install. Then we're going to do another pair of 6.5-inch coax. I'm going to show you the tools you're going to need. It's going to take you about an hour and a half. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks so you don't make any mistakes, and the system's going to sound great. So let's get it over into the shop and get started. Let's get this mule kicking with audio.
Included in this system is the overhead speakers, the dash speakers, the AM/FM Bluetooth radio, all the harnesses you need, plus some additional mounting hardware, and the 3.5 and USB input accessory that we'll install in the glove box. You're going to be in and out of this installation in about an hour and a half. Make sure to take a look at this group of tools. There's a full list in the owner's manual. Plus, you're going to want some safety glasses and a work light because you're going to be up under that dash and it can get a little dark.
Make sure now that we go to pull the dash, you want to get your machine into the lower gear, neutral, so that you'll have plenty of space. See how gentle it comes off? It comes off real easy. Now let's get in tight so I can show you the cables that you're going to need to disconnect. Okay, next thing we're going to do is going to pull the dash out completely. The first cable is for the speedometer, and it's pretty tight. So you want to just get in there with your hand. You're going to feel that rubber collar, pull that loose, and there's a little pin. And once you've got the speedometer loose, you're set. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to pull accessory ground twice. I put some tape, so I put that the white equals the copper. Sorry for my penmanship. White equals copper. You see there, copper. Black equals silver. So that way I know I can put them back in the proper position, in the proper order. Then do the same thing on the other side of the dash. I've labeled green, red, white, black, so that I can put all these harnesses, pull them out, and then replace them. Now I'm going to get the ignition. I'm going to push that cable on the gray, pull that right out. Now my dash is completely loose. We want to put that shift knob back on so we don't harpoon ourselves while we're working on our unit. Next thing up is we're going to make a hole for our accessory that gives us a 3.5 and a USB, and we're going to mount it in the glove box. Luckily there's nothing on the side of the glove box, so it's a pretty safe drill, pretty easy. Use some painter's tape so we can get a nice mark in there that we can see for our drill. And we're going to measure 70 millimeters back, 40 millimeters down. Okay, now we're ready to drill. Just want to be careful of your harnesses in the back. You might, get a helper. Just gently go through right there and keep those harnesses out of your way, because you don't want that bit to jump around on you. And as soon as you get through that first pilot hole on the bit, now just slowly let the bit do the work. Okay, next up, we want to get the accessory into the hole and get our cables back here where we're going to hook everything together. So first thing is you want to remove this big nut. There's a rubber washer, and then there's the little lid. The rubber washer also needs to come off. All right, cables are going to go through. I'm going to pull all that slack back. Just hang it out the dash for now. You'll orient it however you like. Okay, I'm going to make sure that my rubber washer goes down first, past the threaded piece. Make sure it sits nice and flush. Then my big rubber nut, nice and snug. Don't use a tool, don't use a wrench, just get it finger tight. And now you can see it's all set. And when I'm not using it, I can put the waterproof plug in. I'll need to orient that. Now you can take a small USB stick. This one happens to be 8 gig of memory, and I can just plug that in, and there's my secret music source. Close it up, and then just set these wires to the side until we get our source unit panel back in.
Now we're going to want to prepare the pocket on the dash so that all the cables can connect to the radio. Put a packing blanket in the back of your mule, use that as a work surface, or if you have a big toolbox. Just follow the manual, the process, which tools to use, and the instructions are all written out for you. Once you drilled the hole, just remove all the tape. Check those edges on the plastic to make sure there's no sharp edges to cut cables. Now, getting our dash pocket ready, we want to be able to take this harness and pass the connectors through the hole that we just drilled. All we want coming through is the radio harness that you see in purple and the antenna lead.
I'm going to turn it over so we can see it a little easier. See, my fuse comes right through, and I'm going to gently pull these 1, 2, 3, 4 connectors out. Now I've got my big Molex. Then I'm going to put in my antenna cable. I could put a little tape around that if I wanted to, or I could just leave it loose.
Now, we're going to be mounting this unit, but this is not when we're putting the dash into the vehicle. All we're doing now is getting the radio in its plate into the pocket so we can do our mounting screws. We find that it's really easy to do this work on your flat work surface. So we're going to gather all these RCAs together, plus these additional wires, and just get everything tucked into the pocket. Now everything is out of the way so that we can mark our spots for our 4 screws. Now you can do the marking of the dash either in the vehicle or on your flat work surface. But the goal here is we want to put a scratch with our awl or our pick in all 4 points where we need to screw. Then we need to remove that radio and using our drill out all 4 points that holds our source unit dash plate into the dash. Once our 4 holes are drilled, now we're going to reassemble the radio adapter plate into the dash. And now we don't want to miss any of these connections. The big radio connector, the antenna, we want to take all these RCAs and additional cables and slowly process them through the hole in the back. Once everything's tucked in, we're going to use our hand tools and our screws to secure the radio plate to the dash. Now we're ready to move on to the upper speakers. The innovation of the Max clamp is really cool because one person can do this install. You open the clamp, pass it up over the roll cage, and you can see it closes back on itself. Mount your 4 screws, and that's it. You're ready to move on to the other side of the vehicle.
You hear that little snap. And that is ready to go. Now we'll get some Phillips, get our Phillips screws 4 times. If they don't snap, you're going to get cross threading, so you might have to just nudge it to the left or nudge it to the right. And once those clamps are snapped, those screws go right in like butter. I prefer to use hand tools just so that I don't over tighten anything, because I have a reputation. Now next, I'm going to take that harness, I'm going to put a wire tie here, put a wire tie here. I'm going to work that wire all the way down the other side of that roll cage. So we're just going to take these wires and get them all tidied up. Keep our slack on the right side. Then we're going to bring this harness right down the roll cage here towards the hole in the body down below. So first thing I got to do is take that cup holder out because we're going to use that as an access point. Next, I'm going to bring that harness down the roll cage. We'll zip tie it later, and we want to get these connectors into this body panel. Not possible, right? So luckily, there you've got a nice harness. So we'll disconnect those wires. Set this harness aside for a moment. And now, super easy. to get this into that body panel, put our hand into the cup holder cavity, pull it around. Now I can plug in these speakers again and match up my colors. Now those are all nice and snug. I can take my big harnesses, put it in, and I can easily reach right over the top of the glove box and grab a hold of that harness. See? And now I'm just going to bring that over to center.
And then go back along the harness and the roll cage and use your zip ties to get it all cleaned up.
Okay, so now we're going to get our speaker placed so that we can drill our holes for our push pins or our push rivets. Just let your speaker wire dangle. You're going to take your speaker, get yourself a piece of tape, and you're just going to hold it up there, find the sweet spot. One more time, check your speaker wire's not hanging out, get your tape right there. So now I'm going to get my black marker. I'm going to make 3 marks. 1, 2, 3. Take my unibit and I'm just going to slowly drill out those holes, and that's it. Pull the blue tape off so it's out of the way. I'll drill 2 more of those spots and we're in good shape. Okay, last step on this speaker, we're going to take the small spade connector and hook it onto the small spade tab. Large spade connector onto the large spade tab, and that's it. Now our speaker is connected. So we're going to turn it over. Remember, the notch is to allow that speaker to go up into the body panel. Slide it right up into the sweet spot. Take our push rivet, get it started. Next one down below, done. Next one underneath, it's a little tough because it's in the total dark, done. And that's it. So that speaker's mounted. I don't push them in until I'm completely done with my job, just in case I need to take it back out. But now you're just going to do the entire process on the driver's side. Dangle the wire, mark, drill your holes, mount your speaker, ready to go. Now we're getting close to just being able to tighten up and tidy up the dash. So we've got our cables coming from our speaker down in the dash on the left side. So here's that harness. We've got our dual connectors on the harness that goes to the visor pods up above. And there's that harness. And then we've got the dash harness in the right door. So we're going to get those put together. I'm going to put a zip tie over here. I'm going to just connect with something that's in the machine, come across, and then we'll put these 3 together. We'll get them kind of tidy. And I want you to notice that we're always going to avoid this mechanism. This is your shifting mechanism, and it's mechanical, so we don't want anything close to this. And then, of course, we've got the right side harness, and we're going to buckle that up. Now, to that, I'm also going to add
the flexible power sports antenna for the back of the radio.
So we'll just have that in the same area because it's going to go inside the radio, but it's got a nice eyelet on it so that you can put a zip tie in there and then find a spot that allows you to stretch it out. And then lastly, we're going to deal with this extra cable from our accessory that we mounted into the glove box. Now the best way to treat this is to coil it. I'll put a zip tie on that. So that's all set.
Now you're just going to take a few minutes to zip tie the remaining cables together. Make sure to take your cutters and clean up those zip ties so that you're not leaving any length.
And there we go. So that's our 3.5 input, that's our USB, that's our antenna, this is our speaker, this is our overhead speakers, and this is our other speaker down below in the dash. We're set. We're going to put our dash panel back in with our source unit already mounted. We got to get this gear shift knob, or the grip knob, out of our way. That's going to go right into that slot. We're going to just let all that dangle because we need to do our work on the other side here, which is where we're going to connect our positive and our negative from our radio. So you can see the cables that we took out have ACC plus, ACC negative. And you remember we made a code here. White equals copper and black equals silver. So we have a pretty ingenious little connector here. So we're going to take our red, which is positive, and we're going to put them on this jumper. Okay, then we're going to do the other side for the negative. So that's how those look when they're ready to go. But so that they're not in our way, we're going to plug the one on the bottom first so that it's done. So ACC plus is the white, so that goes to the copper. ACC negative goes to the silver, and that's the negative. And now we're going to take the positive and the white and go to the copper. And now the ACC negative that's now sharing a jumper with the negative coming out of the source unit goes to the other tab, and that is how that looks proper. Now you can really get a good look at it. Now you can really get a good look at it. Our power and ground are now taken care of. So before we do any more connections in the back, let's go back to the front and get the connectors in the front of the dash. You're going to find one of these inputs says aux 1, and that's going to be your RCAs. Make sure that these other RCAs have their waterproof caps closed. Okay, now we're going to take our USB, open the waterproof cap, make our connection. And lastly, our antenna.
Once all those connections are done, I can push the large radio harness back through the dash and then tuck all this excess wire into the dash pocket. Now I'm ready for screws.
Okay, that's it. Everything's mounted. It's nice and solid. Now I'm going to go back in, and we need to put all of our dash switches back. We need to hook up all the audio controls to the harness, and just double check that the speedometer and that the ignition and everything's ready to go.
Now while everything's loose, this is our chance to now go back in behind the dash and start making all those connections between the dash switches and the audio. Everything is color coded and everything is waterproof. So when you put these connectors together, you really want to make sure you hear that click. And you'll notice they're keyed so that they can only go one direction.
So that's all of our speakers, that's our power and our ground, that's our antenna, our 3.5 input, and the USB.
Now we want to get the speedometer cable ready and move to the other side of the dash. You're going to want to hear a good click when you put this together.
Good. Then we'll go down our colors. Black, just like we labeled them. Then white. Then red. Last is green. And I'll just make sure I didn't turn anything on for when we reconnect our battery.
And now I'm ready to plug in the speedometer cable. Make sure that you hear that good snap when the connector engages itself. And then we're going to take the rubber boot and slide it in there to make sure that we're waterproof and covered up. We're going to make sure that none of our cables are on the shifting mechanism, and then we can put the dash back in place and we're ready to put in our push pins.
Okay, so the next step is to put in our push pins and put our shift knob back on, and then we're done. However, this is always a good spot to check all your connections before you button it up. So I've already connected the negative of the battery, so I'm going to just make sure that my system powers up and that I got everything plugged back in properly. There's accessory, all my switches light up, my speedometers come to life, so I got all that plugged back in correct. I'm going to go ahead and start the machine. Machine's running well. Now I'll power up the unit. Power comes on, and just so I don't have to worry about looking for a radio station, I've loaded some MP3 files on a jump drive, so I'm going to just put those in. The unit recognizes that it's got files loaded there, so it's already playing. I'll turn up the music.